I couldn't verify the more dramatic claims in the source text about Angel Reese having a meltdown, being left out of Team USA camp, or making the specific public remarks described there. What is confirmed is that Caitlin Clark, star for Team USA in Puerto Rico, won tournament MVP, and that Angel Reese was in fact named to the 12-player roster for the qualifying tournament. Here is a clean, rewritten version that keeps the core Clark versus the field news angle without repeating unsupported claims. FIBA basketball. Caitlin Clark just had the kind of international debut that changes the temperature of an entire conversation. And that is really the first thing to understand about what happened in Puerto Rico. This was not a preseason scrimmage, not a light exhibition, and not a made-for-hype showcase where nothing was on the line. This was Team USA at the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifying tournament. Real opponents, real pressure, real expectations, and a player stepping into senior national team basketball for the first time after a long gap away from competitive action. What followed was not cautious, and it definitely was not ordinary. Clark helped the United States go 5-0, averaged 11.6 points and a tournament-best 6.4 assists, posted the best average efficiency on the team, and walked away with the Tizot MVP award. FIBA basketball. That is why so many people around women's basketball have been treating this week like more than just another nice accomplishment for a star guard. It felt like a statement. Clark did not just fit in with the senior team. She took over stretches of games with her pace, her reads, and her passing in a way that instantly changed the feel of the offense. The first big sign came in her debut, when she piled up 17 points and 12 assists in only 19 minutes against Senegal. FIBA's own coverage described it as a near-record performance. And when you look at the stat line, it is easy to see why. 12 assists in a senior international debut is not something you stumble into. That is a player seeing the floor at a different level and making everyone around her more dangerous. FIBA basketball. And that is where this story gets especially interesting, because Clark did not make her impact in one narrow way. She was not just a hot hand on one night, then a passenger the next, across the tournament. She kept doing the same things that followed her everywhere else, speeding up the game, stretching defenses, and making the right pass early enough that the defense never quite gets comfortable. Team USA's official numbers show that she led the Americans in assists for the event, and FIBA's own recap emphasized how instantly she adapted to senior international play. That matters because there's always a certain kind of skepticism waiting for a young star when they move into a bigger stage. Can the vision translate? Can the timing translate? Can the style survive against older, more experienced players? In Puerto Rico, Clark did not just answer those questions. She made them feel smaller than they looked going in. FIBA basketball. The MVP award was the natural result of that. FIBA announced her as the tournament's Tizot MVP after Team USA's clean sweep, and the reasons were obvious. She was not only productive, she was central. She helped define how the United States looked throughout the week. And from a broader Team USA perspective, that may be the biggest takeaway of all. Clark did not seem like a guest star passing through the senior program. She looked like someone who belongs in the long-term conversation about what the next version of Team USA is supposed to be. FIBA basketball. That is why the symbolic side of the tournament hit so hard too. Clark wore number 12 for Team USA, a number deeply associated with Diana Taurasi's legendary international career. That immediately made people curious about Taurasi's reaction, because women's basketball fans have not forgotten what she said before Clark's WNBA career even started. Taurasi's reality as coming line became part of the mythology around Clark almost instantly. Some people heard it as veteran honesty. Some heard it as cold dismissal. Either way, it stayed attached to Clark's rise. So when Taurasi later reacted to seeing Clark in number 12, her words carried real weight. She said it was cool to see Caitlin not only in a USA jersey, but in that number, and added that she could not think of anyone better to wear it and build an amazing career in it. That is not some casual compliment. That is one all-time great publicly recognizing the next face of the program, Yahoo Sports. And honestly, that tells you how much this tournament changed the mood, because the old debate around Clark always had a certain edge to it. There was always some version of yes, but... Yes, she is exciting, but let's see it against professionals. Yes, she can dominate one level, but there are layers to the next one. Yes, the attention is real, but now comes the hard part. What Puerto Rico did was strip away some of that hesitation. It is not that one tournament ends every debate forever. It is that Clark looked so natural in the environment that the conversation itself started to move. At some point, people stop asking whether she belongs and start asking what the ceiling is when the offense is fully hers. That is also why any attempt to turn this tournament into some kind of jealousy narrative around Angel Reese feels much weaker than the basketball itself. Reese is absolutely part of Team USA's broader young core conversation, and reliable reporting shows she was named to the 12-player roster for the Puerto Rico qualifying tournament. So this was never some clear-cut case of Clark shining while Reese was being cast aside. The real story is much simpler and much stronger than internet drama. Clark took one major international opportunity and maximized it. She did exactly what stars are supposed to do when the stage gets bigger. She looked even more important. Reese's long-term Team USA goals are also well documented. But this particular week belonged to Clark because the basketball left very little room for any other conclusion. Chicago Sun-Times. And that leads directly into the business side of Caitlin Clark's rise, because at this point the on-court impact and the off-court influence are feeding each other in a way that is hard to overstate. Forbes ranked Clark number 4 on its 2025 list of the most powerful women in sports, making her the highest-ranked athlete on that list. That is not just a popularity contest. It reflects audience growth, commercial pull, visibility, and the way brands and networks are reacting to what she has already changed in women's basketball. Clark also appeared on Sportico's list of the highest-paid female athletes of 2025, driven largely by endorsement power that has made her one of the biggest business stories in the sport. Forbes. That is the context people have to understand when they talk about why every Clark performance now lands so loudly. The basketball is one story, but the market effect is another, and the two are now impossible to separate. She is not just a productive player. She is a force multiplier. Attendance, television, sponsorship interest, general visibility. All of it moves when Clark is involved. That is why a tournament like Puerto Rico reverberates beyond the box score. A player who already had huge domestic impact just walked into international senior competition and immediately looked like one of the defining figures of the event. That is how stars stop being local phenomena and become central figures in the sport itself. Forbes. There's also something important in the way Clark did all of this. She did not look like someone hunting a narrative. She looked like someone playing the game the right way and letting the result take care of itself. The assists, the tempo control, the willingness to move the ball early and attack before the defense could settle. That style scales beautifully on a roster loaded with talent. And that may be the most exciting part if you are Team USA. The better the players around her are, the more dangerous her passing and pace become. Puerto Rico gave a preview of that. It showed the shape of what a Clark-led senior national team offense could look like over a longer cycle. That is why people are already talking about Berlin and the next stage for the Americans. Clark's tournament did not feel like a side plot or a fun experiment. It felt like information. It felt like Team USA learning in real time what the next version of the program can become if it is willing to let her style set the tone. And once that happens, the conversation changes not just for Clark, but for everybody else around her. Guards who run the floor hard become more dangerous. Bigs who seal early become easier to reward. Shooters who relocate get cleaner looks. Great playmakers do that. They do not just put up pretty numbers. They rearrange what is available to everyone else. So the cleanest way to say it is this. Puerto Rico was not important because Caitlin Clark won MVP. Puerto Rico was important because she made senior national team basketball look like a natural extension of everything people had already seen from her at other levels. She walked into a new setting, wore one of the most meaningful jersey numbers in USA basketball history, helped lead the team to a 5-0 record, and looked like a player whose future with the program is going to be central, not occasional. That is a much bigger statement than one viral comparison or one manufactured rivalry. And that is probably the real reason the reaction has been so loud. Not because the internet needed more drama, but because the basketball itself was undeniable. Clark looked ready. Team USA looked better with her. One of the greatest players ever publicly embraced the symbolism of her wearing number 12. And the larger women's basketball world got another reminder that every time the stage gets bigger, Caitlin Clark seems to find a way to make the game slow down for her anyway. That is not hype. That is a pattern. And Puerto Rico just gave that pattern